Stop here.
Sir, we're already running late.
Pull over. Is that fried chicken?
Yes, sir. $6 a box. Made it myself this morning.
"Where did you learn to make this?" She said, "My mother taught me."
What was your mother's name?
She said, "My mother's name is Denise."
What? She has a resemblance to someone I lost track of 23 years ago.
Wait, she has the exact same face as a woman I lost 23 years ago. Before we get into this one, hit that like button. Subscribe if this is your first time here. Tag someone who needs a good cry today, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The wind off Lake Michigan cut sideways through downtown Chicago, dragging sheets of cold rain across Halsted Street. Ava Monroe had been standing under the cracked awning of a shuttered pharmacy for almost 2 hours, and her cardboard sign, "Homemade fried chicken, $6." A box had gone soft and gray at the edges. She lifted the lid of her cooler just enough to check on the last 4 boxes. The batter was still crisp, the smell of buttermilk, black pepper, and a secret dash of smoked paprika rising up through the steam. Her grandmother used to say a good fried chicken recipe should smell like a hug before it ever touched your tongue. "Fried chicken, still hot," Ava called out, her voice thinner than she wanted it to be. A man in a business suit walked past without looking up from his phone. 2 women under a shared umbrella laughed at something and kept walking. A cab splashed gutter water onto the sidewalk, narrowly missing her shoes. She was cold. She was hungry. She had $11 in her coat pocket and a room at a boarding house on Loomis Street that cost $40 a night. But she did not sit down on the curb, and she did not put out a cup for change. Her mother had taught her that losing your money was not the same as losing yourself. Across the intersection, a Blacktown car idled at a red light. Inside sat Nathaniel Cross, the 51-year-old CEO of Cross Republic Holdings, a name printed on the side of half the glass towers in the Loop. Forbes had called him the coldest man in Chicago real estate. What Forbes did not know was that Nathaniel Cross had not eaten a home-cooked meal in 23 years, and that a photograph he could never bring himself to throw away sat locked in the bottom drawer of his office desk. "Mr. Cross, we're already 15 minutes behind for the Michigan Avenue meeting," his driver Reggie said, glancing in the mirror. Nathaniel didn't answer. He was watching the girl with the cooler. There was something about the way she stood in the rain, exhausted but still smiling at every stranger who passed, absorbing rejection after rejection without letting it show on her face, that made him forget, for a moment, where he was supposed to be. "Pull over," he said quietly. "Sir?" "Pull over, Reggie." The car eased to the curb. Ava startled as the rear door opened and a tall man in a charcoal overcoat stepped out into the rain without an umbrella, as if he hadn't noticed it was falling at all. "Is that fried chicken?" he asked. "Yes, sir. $6 a box. Made it myself this morning." He studied the cooler, then her face, in a way that felt less like judgment and more like he was trying to remember something. "You're not going to tell me it's the best in Chicago?" Ava managed a tired smile. "I figure a man in a coat like that has people telling him things are the best in Chicago all day long. I'd rather you just taste it." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or the first real amusement he'd felt in longer than he could say. Most people chose their words around him, like they were defusing a bomb. This stranger had known him for 10 seconds and already spoken to him like an equal. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ava." "Ava what?" She hesitated, the way she always did with her last name, the way her mother had taught her to hold it a little carefully. "Monroe." "Ava Monroe." The color left Nathaniel's face. "Did you say Monroe?" "Yes," Ava said, watching him carefully now. "Is something wrong?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He was looking at her the way you look at a photograph you've kept for decades and suddenly see moving and breathing in front of you the same warm brown eyes, the same habit of tilting her head slightly when she didn't understand something. "How old are you?" he asked. 23. "Why does that matter?" "Do you sell chicken here every night?" "Most nights. I can't afford to miss too many." "Why not?" Ava looked down at the cooler. "Because when you don't have any family to call if things go wrong, missing a night of work can turn into missing a month of rent." Nathaniel felt something tighten in his chest that he didn't have a name for yet. "You live alone?" "Yes." "Your parents?" "My mother passed when I was 12. I never met my father." He went very still. "Give me a box," he said finally. Ava handed him the best one from the cooler. He opened it right there on the sidewalk and took a bite before he could stop himself. And the moment the flavor hit him, he stopped walking, stopped breathing almost, because it wasn't just good fried chicken. It was the fried chicken. The buttermilk soak, the extra black pepper, the smoked paprika folded in at the very end so it never burned in the oil. A recipe that only one person in the world had ever made exactly that way. "Where did you learn to make this?" His voice had gone rough. "My mother taught me." "What was her name?" "Denise." Nathaniel stepped back like he'd been struck. For 23 years he had rehearsed somewhere in the back of his mind what he would do if he ever heard that name spoken out loud again. Now that it had happened, he couldn't find a single word. "Are you okay?" Ava asked, alarmed. He looked at her properly, then really looked, and the resemblance became impossible to ignore. Denise's eyes, Denise's slightly crooked smile, and when the wind pushed Ava's braids back off her neck, he saw it. A small birthmark, shaped like a coffee bean, just below her left ear. His hand started to shake. "Your birthmark," he said. Ava's fingers went protectively to her neck. "What about it? Your mother had the exact same one, in the exact same place." "That's not possible for you to know that." "I kissed it 100 times, Nathaniel said quietly. "I used to tell her it looked like a tiny piece of the earth that decided to follow her around." Ava's face had gone pale. "You knew my mother." "I loved your mother," he said. "I was going to marry her." "She was never married. She disappeared," Nathaniel said. 23 years ago. I was told she left me for someone else. I never believed it. Not really, not once, but I couldn't prove otherwise. And eventually I stopped looking. Ava's grip on the cooler tightened until her knuckles went white. "She never mentioned an engagement. She never mentioned you. How old did you say you were?" 23. He did the math anyway, though he already knew the answer before he finished it. 23 years since Denise had vanished without a word. "Did she ever mention my name?" he asked. "Nathaniel?" Something flickered behind Ava's eye. She remembered, suddenly, a small tin box her mother kept under a floorboard, and inside it, an unopened envelope with a man's name written on the front and a woman's name beneath it in her mother's handwriting. "Do not trust her. She said a name once," Ava said slowly. "When she was sick near the end, she woke up from a dream and said Nathaniel like she was calling out to somebody." Before Nathaniel could respond, a young man jogged across the intersection, holding an umbrella over his head, breathing hard from running 4 blocks in the rain. "Ava, you're soaked. Why didn't you call me?" He stopped short when he saw the stranger standing in front of her. "Is everything all right?" "Marcus," Ava said, still shaken. "He says he knew my mother." Marcus Delaney was 26, with a contractor's calloused hands and the kind of steady patience that came from renovating other people's houses all day, and still having enough left over to worry about Ava at night. He'd bought a box of chicken from her outside a laundromat 8 months ago, come back the next night for seconds, and kept coming back long after Ava realized he didn't even like dark meat that much. He just liked being near her. He positioned himself slightly in front of her now, without making a show of it. "Who are you?" "Nathaniel Cross." Marcus's eyebrows lifted. Everybody in Chicago knew that name, but his focus stayed on Ava. "You don't have to stay here if this is too much." "I need to understand what's happening," Ava said. Nathaniel's phone buzzed in his coat pocket. He glanced at the screen. Diane Cross. His older sister. Diane had been at his side the whole terrible month Denise disappeared. She was the one who'd shown him the goodbye letter. She was the one who'd told him, gently, over and over, that some people just weren't built for the life he was offering them. He answered, "Diane, where are you right now?" Her voice was tight in a way he hadn't heard in years. "Near Halstead and Roosevelt." "Why?" A pause, too long to be nothing. "The local news is running storm coverage. Your car's in the shot. Who's the young woman standing with you?" Nathaniel's stomach dropped. "How do you know she's young?" "The footage is 30 feet away in the rain, Diane." Silence. "You recognize her," he said slowly. "How could you possibly recognize a woman you've never met?" "Nathaniel, don't discuss Denise with that girl. Come home." Ava heard her mother's name come through the phone, tinny and clear, and went cold all over. "Your sister knew my mother," she said. Nathaniel didn't take his eyes off the rain-streaked windshield of his own car. "She's my sister, Diane." Ava's mind went straight to the envelope in the tin box. The name on the front had been Nathaniel Cross. The name written beneath it, in her mother's careful handwriting, had been Diane Cross. "Do not trust her. Your sister's name is on a warning my mother left me," Ava said. Nathaniel turned to her. and something in his composed boardroom face finally cracked. "Show me." "I'm not taking you to where I live," Ava said immediately. "You shouldn't," Marcus agreed. "Not until we know what his sister wants from this." Nathaniel nodded slowly, and the assent seemed to cost him something. "He's right. There's a diner 2 blocks from here, the Palmer House Grill. It's public. Marcus can stay the entire time. We'll talk there, and you decide how much of this you want to know." "I don't want your money," Ava said. "I'm not offering you money. I'm offering you the truth. If I can still find it after 23 years of not looking hard enough." They walked together through the rain, Marcus holding the umbrella mostly over Ava, his own shoulders soaked through by the time they reached the diner. Nathaniel's driver trailed the town car slowly along the curb, but Nathaniel waved him off and walked the 2 blocks on foot, like a man doing penance. Meanwhile, across town in the Gold Coast, Diane Cross set down her phone with a hand that was not quite steady. She stood at the window of her penthouse study, watching the storm bend the trees along Lakeshore Drive. 23 years had taught her exactly how to keep her face composed, even when nothing underneath it was calm. She had seen the girl for 3 seconds on a television screen, and it had been enough. The tilt of the head, the uncertain mouth, Denise's whole face stitched onto somebody 23 years younger. She picked up the landline on her desk and dialed a number she hadn't used in a long time. "It's Diane," she said when the call connected. "I need something retrieved tonight, before my brother gets to it." A pause. "A boarding house on Loomis Street, Mrs. Kowalski's building. There should be a small tin box, probably hidden under a floorboard or at the back of a closet. Bring it to me. Don't damage anything else." Another pause. "I don't care how you get in. I care that it's done before midnight." She hung up and stood very still, one hand flat against the desk. For 23 years she had told herself that what she'd done to Denise had been protection, a wall built to keep her brother's name and his company out of the hands of a woman who could never survive the life that came with them. She had not planned for that wall to produce a daughter. She had not planned for the daughter to have Denise's exact face. Diane opened a drawer and lifted out a small metal box of her own, kept locked for over 2 decades. Inside were forged letters, brittle with age now, and a single photograph of Denise standing outside a small house downstate. A photograph Diane had taken years before her brother even knew of its existence. She held it for a long moment. "You should have stayed gone," she said quietly, as if Denise could still hear her. "For his sake, for yours." Then she fed the letters, one at a time, into the fireplace. She did not yet know that the tin box her men were about to steal from Loomis Street contained no letters at all, only a folded note in Denise's handwriting, bearing Diane's own name, and a warning. The Palmer House Grill smelled like coffee and bacon grease, warm and bright against the storm outside. A waitress seated them in a corner booth without asking questions, though she did a double take at the name on Nathaniel's card when he tried to pay for 4 coffees in advance. "I don't need your money," Ava said again, sliding into the booth beside Marcus. "It's coffee," Nathaniel said. "Let me buy you coffee." Ava allowed it. The waitress brought a plate of toast unasked, the way waitresses do when they can tell someone hasn't eaten. "I'm not hungry," Ava said. Her stomach betrayed her with a low growl. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That was convincing. She shot him a look, but there was no real heat in it. Nathaniel watched them, and for a moment something like grief passed over his face, not for himself, but for all the dinners like this one he'd missed, all the ordinary teasing between 2 people who cared about each other that he'd never gotten to witness. "You were selling chicken in the rain instead of eating," he said. "How much do you owe on your room?" "That's not your business. You might be my daughter," Nathaniel said. The words came out before he could stop them. The table went silent. Marcus's hand found Ava's under the table without either of them deciding to do it. "I shouldn't have said it like that," Nathaniel said quietly. "No," Ava whispered. "You shouldn't have said it at all. I believe it because you look exactly like her. Because you make her recipe exactly the way she made it. Because you have her birthmark in the same place. Because your age lines up with the exact year we were together, almost to the month. That's not proof. No. A DNA test will be proof. But I recognized you before I understood why. And I haven't been able to stop believing it since." Ava stood and walked to the window, watching rain streak sideways across Roosevelt Road. "My father was gone for 23 years, she said, not turning around. "I didn't know you existed," Nathaniel said. "My mother raised me by herself. She worked 2 jobs while she was sick and never once complained where I could hear it. When she died, I went to relatives who made it very clear I was a burden they were stuck with. I moved out the day I turned 18. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't change any of that. No, it doesn't. It doesn't give me back my childhood. It doesn't bring my mother back. No? Nathaniel agreed. It doesn't. She turned to face him, eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. Then don't expect me to look at you and suddenly feel grateful. I expect nothing from you, Nathaniel said. If I'm your father, I failed you without ever knowing I had the chance not to. I can't ask you to forgive 23 years I wasn't there for. All I can do is find out what actually happened to your mother, and let you decide afterward whether there's any place for me in your life at all. Ava's eyes filled despite herself. Marcus came to stand beside her, brushing what he thought was rain off her cheek before he realized it was a tear. Nathaniel looked down at the untouched box of chicken on the table, and for a moment the bright diner seemed to fall away entirely. He was 26 again, standing in the doorway of a narrow kitchen in a rented house downstate, watching Denise dust flour across her hands with the total, careless confidence of someone who had never once doubted her own cooking. You're not allowed to watch, she'd told him, laughing, pushing him back with a floury palm. Family recipe. You have to earn it. How does a man earn a fried chicken recipe? By sticking around long enough to become family. He had stayed. That whole summer they'd walked the block around her house almost every evening after dinner. And he told her things he'd never told another living person, not even Diane, that he didn't want the company his father had built for him. That he wanted a house that smelled like black pepper and buttermilk, instead of a penthouse that smelled like nothing at all. Denise had never once asked him for anything. That, more than her face or her laugh, was what had undone him completely. He remembered the afternoon Diane had first visited, invited by Nathaniel himself, hopeful his sister would love Denise the way he did. Diane had been polite. Diane had smiled, admired the little backyard garden, eaten the chicken, and said all the right things. But Nathaniel had seen the way his sister's eyes moved over Denise's worn dress and work-roughened hands, cataloging her like a liability. She hated her, Nathaniel said out loud, the memory arriving with sudden, sickening clarity. Diane hated your mother from the very first afternoon, and she never once said it to my face. Ava turned from the window. What are you talking about? The way she looked at her. I told myself it was just Diane being careful. The way she was careful about everyone who came near the company. I never let myself see it as anything else. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. Your mother left a note. In the box you mentioned. A warning, Ava said. 3 words. Do not trust Diane. Nathaniel closed his eyes. For 23 years, Diane had told him Denise had betrayed him, that she'd left of her own accord for a life without cameras and headlines. That searching any further would only humiliate him publicly. Every time he'd wavered, she'd produced the same farewell letter, the same gentle reminder that some people simply weren't built for a life like his. Now, Denise's daughter was sitting across from him holding proof that the whole story had been a lie. I need to see that note, he said. Tonight, if it's still there. It's at my room, Ava said. On Loomis Street. Then we go now, Marcus said, already reaching for the umbrella. They left the diner together, Nathaniel this time insisting the town car take them, and Ava, exhausted, soaked through, and out of reasons to refuse, finally agreed. Reggie drove them the 6 blocks to the boarding house in silence, wipers beating against the storm. The front door of Mrs. Kowalski's boarding house was standing ajar when they arrived, swinging slightly in the wind. Ava froze on the sidewalk. That door is never open, she said. She ran up the stairs 2 at a time with Marcus close behind her and Nathaniel not far after. Her room had been searched, drawers pulled open, the mattress shoved half off the frame, the loose floorboard beneath her bed pried up and left gaping. The tin box was gone. Ava sank onto the edge of the bed, and for the first time all night, the exhaustion in her face turned to something closer to fear. It's gone. Everything my mother left me is gone. Not everything, Marcus said quietly, crouching by the floorboard. He reached into the narrow gap beneath it and pulled out a second, smaller envelope, taped to the underside of the board itself, missed by whoever had searched in a hurry. Your mom kept a backup. Ava's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single folded page in her mother's handwriting, and a faded photograph of a young woman standing outside a little house, laughing at someone just out of frame. Nathaniel took the photograph first, and his breath caught. It was Denise, 23 years younger, in front of the house where they'd fallen in love, a house he hadn't been able to bring himself to drive past in over 2 decades. Ava read the letter aloud, her voice unsteady. If you are reading this, then I'm gone, and someone finally found what I hid. Nathaniel, I never left you. Diane paid a man to tell me a lie about your father's health so I would leave town quietly. And by the time I discovered it wasn't true, she had already shown you a letter I never wrote. I was carrying our daughter and too proud and too frightened to fight a family with your kind of money. I am not sorry I raised her myself. I am only sorry I never told her the truth while I still had the chance. Her name is Ava. She has your stubbornness and my birthmark. And if you are ever lucky enough to meet her, please, please do not let her grow up thinking nobody ever chose her. I chose her every single day. I hope in the end, you get the chance to choose her too. Nathaniel sat down heavily on the edge of the ruined bed, the photograph still in his hand. And for the first time in 23 years, he did not try to hide that he was crying. She never left me, he said. She never left either of us. Ava wiped her own face with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now, Nathaniel said, I go to my sister, and I bring this letter with me, and I stop letting her decide what my family is allowed to look like. He looked up at Ava, then at Marcus's hand resting protectively on her shoulder. And if you'll let me, I would like the chance to actually know my daughter, not tomorrow, not because of a DNA test, but starting tonight, on your terms, at whatever pace you can stand. Ava looked down at the photograph of her mother, laughing outside a house she'd never seen, and then at the man who had spent 23 years grieving a woman who had never stopped loving him. Okay, she said quietly, but you start by helping me find whoever broke into my room, and then you're going to sit down and eat a full box of my chicken without complaining that it's not fancy enough for you. For the first time all night, Nathaniel Cross laughed a real one, rough with disuse. Deal. For the first time all night, Nathaniel Cross laughed a real one, rough with disuse. Deal. Outside, the storm over Chicago was finally beginning to break, the first thin line of clear sky showing over the lake.